Central City, let's talk about that for a bit. Central City is going gangbusters. For those of you that haven't been in recently, you will see the private sector is making huge strides in our Central City. If you manage to get up 6 or 7 stories in the Central City and look around, you will see nothing but cranes. I was up at the opening of Lanning Neves offices not long ago, and you can see just nothing but cranes when you look out the window. Really exciting to see what's going on, and that will continue. There'll be a bit of bouncing around with the private sector in the Central City. There will be a bit of over-investment, I suspect, over time, because that is inevitable. I always remind myself that in this city, in the hotel industry, and the people in here in the hotel industry that know more about this, much more about this than I do. But historically, we always used to run out of hotel space in the city, and then we built 4 more. And then the hotel industry said, oh, we're overstocked, and I've got too many rooms, and gradually they would fill up, and then we'd build 4 more hotels. And so you go these big lumps. Well, we're sort of going to do that as we rebuild our city, not hotels in particular, but buildings generally. I see a bit of bouncing going on. You know, we may over-cater for office accommodation in certain sectors of the city. We may be stretched to find enough retail to go around. That's perfectly normal as part of the regeneration of our city. What we've got to be really careful of, and this is all I will say, is that we need to be careful that we don't delay the rebuild by trying to jostle for positions in the Central City. We need to be careful of the big picture, and we need to be conscious of the big picture, and we need to go for it. And I'll tell you, no one is going to end up completely happy in the context of the big picture, because people get kicked around on the way through. There's no doubt about that. But the outcome has to be always measured in the context of what is the optimal outcome for Christchurch as a whole. And I think that's going to require some testing times ahead, but as long as we're all on the same page and we all understand that's important, then that's good. The anchor projects, talk about some of them. The river precinct, you will see an enormous amount of stuff going on now in the Avon River, right from where the memorial's being built near the hospital, right in Montreal Street, right down through to past where the old Avon Oxford on A1 used to be, below the town hall. It's much, much more than I ever expected. It's not just tying up the riverbanks. We're going through a major transformation of that whole river precinct, which will encourage the city to face the river in a way that I never expected, but it'll be absolutely fantastic when it's finished. And the memorial that sits in Montreal Street to commemorate the deaths of 185 people, that is also a massive undertaking. If you've driven across that Montreal Street Bridge recently, have a look at the works that are going on there. That is going to be the stunning statement and memorial for the people who died in the earthquake, and that will be finished by February next year. The Metro Sports facility is well advanced now in terms of design. It's been publicly announced. There are steps being taken to get that underway, and we would expect some real action there in the near future. The Justice Precinct is well advanced, looking amazing, and it's a big statement by all those emergency services in our Central City, and it's going to be a real big core of workers that are coming into the Central City every day to work in beautiful surroundings. The Justice Precinct isn't just a big box of buildings. It's carved up with laneways, it's got internal courtyards, it's going to have a lot of public access right through those beautiful buildings of the city. And one of the things I keep seeing is the attractiveness of the design of what is going on, particularly with the private sector, what is going on in our Central City. We all had this fear that we were going to end up with tilt slab buildings and quick fixers and buildings knocked up because they had to be. It's not happening like that at all. It's going to be fantastic. And you get a taste of that when you go down Cambridge Terrace and you have a look down Durham Street and Victoria Street. But we have to always remember that the core of our Central City was cordoned off for a couple of years, and then we had to get the horizontal infrastructure right, and now we can really start investing in that Central City to catch up with what's been going on around it. It really is quite exciting. And the South Frame and the East Frame, which Takara is responsible for, they're progressing as they should. So I'm not going to mention anything about the convention centre. What I will say is that the stadium is, and this, I'm only repeating here what has been publicly stated, because I'm very conscious that I'm not a spokesperson for Takara. I'm wearing my chamber hat. So what is publicly stated, the sports stadium is still under deliberation. Most of the land has been secured for the sports stadium, but the important thing now is to establish a business case for the stadium for the future. So it's all very well to have a stadium, but you've got to have a business case which will justify the proposition. So that's all I would want to say about the central city. The other thing I want to mention in the context of the central city, just briefly, and I'm getting to the end of what I want to say to you all, 30k restriction. We're not happy with the 30k restriction. We're very much happy. We think the 30k restrictions are fine right in the core of the central city, where we're encouraging people not to drive fast. But we've got some doubts about the effectiveness of the 30k restrictions on our one-way street systems. I mean, you either have one-way street systems that are arterial routes through your city, or you don't. And if you do have them, you probably don't encourage people to drive at 30 kilometres an hour down them. So we're talking to the council together with the Property Institute and the Central Business Association. We're talking to the council about that and seeing if we can't get some compromise. There was a survey that we were involved in that was done, and some of you probably responded to it. 84% of the people aren't happy with the 30k restriction the way it is at the moment. Those are people that operate in the central city. So there's definitely something we need to do there. Not quite sure what the outcome will be. My original position on that was suck it and see. If it doesn't work, we'll change it, but it looks like it's not working, so we better start looking at how we change it. The other thing I'll mention briefly is the visitor strategy. There's a lot of work going on now to establish a comprehensive and collaborative visitor strategy for Christchurch. It's not just about tourists, it's about visitors. Obviously that includes business people, it includes your friends and family that come and stay with you, it includes tourists, international tourists and domestic tourists, and people that are just cruising through. So a lot of work to try and re-establish the visitor numbers that we had prior to the earthquake, because we've still got a bit of catch up to do. That's driven by lack of accommodation, so we need to get on top of that quickly. But it's also driven by the need that we need a much more coordinated response. We need a good story to tell. We do not have that story for Christchurch yet, and we need to get on with it. We need to make sure we've got a story about what the city aspires to be, what makes us an attractive place for people to want to come to. So I've sort of got to the stage now where I say, well, we want Christchurch to be a place where, not where people need to live or where people have to live, but where people want to live. And it's the same with the visitor strategy. We want a strategy where people come to Christchurch because they want to come to Christchurch, not just because it happens to be on the way through to somewhere else. And that somewhere else is pretty important for us in the context of tourism. I'm a bit sort of gnarly about the fact that the whole New Zealand tourism proposition is sold on the beauty of the South Island. And more we've been trucking people into Auckland, taking them down to Rotorua, taking them back to Auckland, and thanking them very much for coming to New Zealand. And they're missing out on what they thought was the proposition they were coming to. So we need to recapture that. We need to re-establish the South Island as the destination, and that's dependent on wide-body jet aircraft coming into Christchurch International Airport. And Milton Johns is doing a fantastic job out of the airport with his team building up wide aircraft capacity, which is really important to increase tourist numbers, particularly from Asia. Also important because we have about a 29,000 tonne freight deficit of cargo that we have to truck to Auckland to go out through wide-body jets because we don't have the wide-body jet capacity in Christchurch. So we need to make sure that we build that up. We need to make sure that Christchurch is not only an excellent feeder airport throughout New Zealand with all the good work that New Zealand does to make sure that we are one of the busiest airports in the country. We also need to ensure that we've got direct connectivity to offshore markets for tourism, for business travel and for cargo. The story and the structure of how the tourism and visitor strategy will all work out is sort of work in progress, but really important that we get our heads around it. If you read Christchurch International Airport's aspirations, they currently, in the year 2016, will have 6.3 million passengers through that airport. Who would have thought? Their aspiration is by 2025 they will have 8.5 million. Another 2 million going through the airport per annum on a relatively stable population base. So it's a big increase, and we need to look at how we cope with that and what we do in terms of accommodating the visitors that are inevitably going to come to the South Island of New Zealand in the context of not destroying what they're coming to see. And that's a big challenge for us. It's a big challenge for us too, looking at, in my opinion, looking at where Christchurch sits, where the South Island sits, and where Queenstown Lakes sit in all of this. Because I will predict to you that within 20 years there'll be 2 commercial hubs in the South Island of New Zealand of significance. One is Greater Christchurch, which will be known as Christchurch, but it will include the boundaries of Christchurch. The other one will be Queenstown Lakes. Not Queenstown, Queenstown Lakes. Queenstown, Arrowtown, Cromwell, Leggett, Wanaka. Watch out, it's coming. And we better be prepared for it, because the interdependency between what happens there and what happens here, in everything we do from an economic perspective, in transport and connectivity and IT capability, is going to have to be taken into account in the future. And then how we triangulate that area, our area, and the rest of the world is going to be critical for our future. It's a great opportunity. Just in the context of the regional activity that's going on, the Mayoral Forum is doing some great work. The Mayoral Forum is an entity that is chaired by Dame Margaret Paisley. It involves all of the 10 mayors of Canterbury, and they're developing a strategy for the region. It comes under various headings, and Dame Margaret has charged mayors of various localities with a specific issue to deal with. Those issues include freshwater management, transport infrastructure, digital connectivity, value-added production, and secondary economies. It's putting a UHT plant into your dairy industry, not just drying out the milk. Education and trading, newcomers and migrant settlement, and a regional visitor strategy. So you can see the interdependencies of what are going on across our region with what we're doing here in Christchurch. Really, really healthy. Really, really important that we make it work across the community, not just isolated in the city. No point in rebuilding Christchurch if we're not going to appreciate the independency we have with our region. Just very finally, can I just say, we are doing some work at the Chamber on healthy communities. We see much more than just looking after our members in the context of good outcomes for our economy. We recognise the interdependency between a healthy community and a healthy business sector, so we put a lot of work into how we can make Christchurch a healthier city. And currently we're doing a lot of work with not only with the health sector directly, and the other players in the health sector, particularly around some of the psychosocial issues that are impacting post-earthquake, and how they might impact on employees or employers, and what we can do about that. So you'll see more about that coming out shortly. But we're also working directly with the police and seeing what they're struggling with, and some of the underbelly and some of the issues that are occurring here in Christchurch. The very, very limited number of people who are causing mayhem in our community. What do we do to break down the intergenerational crime cycles to make sure that this city is a better place to live? I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that if we could stop crime in 50 of the most dysfunctional families in this city, we would reduce our crime rate by our violent crime rate by 70%. What would Christchurch look like if we reduced violent crime by 70%? It'd be a completely different prospect. So from my perspective, what do you have to do? How much resource do you have to put into 50 families to break down that intergenerational crime? And there's a lot of good work going on through various entities at the moment, but I think we can do more, and I think we can do it in a more targeted way, and I think we get a much better outcome if we understand that this is going to take a long time and we need to make a long-term commitment to it. So that's it. That's my download.